What subject do you study at university if you want to take care of animals? Where are there more students, in a lecture or in a tutorial? Which word is similar to grade, note or mark? What is the name of a student who doesn't already have a degree? What is the name of a person who teaches students? What is a name for a piece of work you do as part of your course? Which university subject studies the human mind? What can you sometimes do if you fail an exam at university?
Hi, Scott. Are you okay? You don't look very well.
I'm not brilliant, no. I was up late last night studying for the history exam we've got this afternoon. I probably drank about 5 cups of coffee and didn't go to sleep until 3:30.
I can't do that. It just makes me too tired to think on the day of the exam.
The problem is that I only started studying for the exam yesterday.
Why? Scott, we've known about it for a month.
I know, but I hate revising. I prefer to leave revision to the last minute.
Really? I remember more if I study for short periods every day.
The problem is that I never have time to study. I've got basketball practice 3 times a week, so I don't have time to study at all on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays. And I always have a match on Saturday. And then I often play football on Sundays.
Well, last night, did you have time to revise all of the 7 different topics that come up in the exam?
7? I thought there were only 5. Anyway, I only studied 3 of the topics because I haven't got any notes for some of them. I don't know if I've lost them or if I just didn't write anything down in the first place. Anyway, there are only 3 questions in today's exam, aren't there?
Yes, but what if the questions are about the topics you haven't studied?
I looked at last year's exam and chose the topics that didn't come up last year. Anyway, if I do 2 questions really well, I can pass.
But Scott, didn't you hear what the teacher said? He said that in this exam you have to answer everything.
Did he? I don't remember that. Oh dear, I'm going to fail, aren't I?
Look, the exam's after lunch. You can study some of the other topics during the lunch break.
Yes, in theory I could. But Mum brought me to school in her car this morning because I was so tired, and I left my books and papers in the car. She goes home for lunch, but it'd take too long to go home and come back again.
Listen, Scott, the only good thing is that this is the first exam of the term. There are lots of exams this year, so you can try to get a higher mark next time.
I need to think about this question at the moment because this is my last year at school. I really like studying languages. I study English and French at school, and I also study German outside school. I think I'd like to study languages at university. My parents would rather I studied music because I play the piano really well. But I'd prefer to be a translator or an interpreter than a musician.
I enjoy doing sport. I don't have much time during the week, but on Saturday or Sunday, I play football or basketball. I'm in a youth football team, so it's important I practice a lot. Sometimes I watch movies at home. You know, sci-fi movies. They're my favourite.
Yes, I do. I like books. Yes, I like reading.
It depends. I like doing projects and things like that with other people, but when I have exams, I prefer revising alone because I find it easier to concentrate when I'm on my own. You have a good time when you work with other people, but sometimes you don't do much work.
I prefer doing mental work. That's because I'm not very strong and I don't really like sport. My parents would prefer me to do more exercise because they say I'm always reading or playing computer games. The thing is, I don't mind spending hours reading at the weekend, but when my mum makes me do chores, I get bored really quickly.
It's quite a small place, and so I like being able to walk everywhere. For example, I can walk to school. I don't need to catch a bus or anything. But it can be a bit boring too, because there aren't many places to go. At least we live quite close to a big city, so we can go there quite easily, at the weekend, for example. But personally, I think I'd rather not live in a small town. I'd rather live in a city.
I needed money to help me to pay for university, so I looked for a job in my hometown. It's a small town, and the only work I could find was in a restaurant. I'd never worked in a restaurant before, and I didn't enjoy it much. But in some ways, that was a good thing. I realised that I never wanted to do a job like that again. It motivated me to study hard at university, so that I could get ahead. It's really difficult to get interesting, creative jobs nowadays, but now I know what the alternative is. Also, the other plus side was that I'd been working really hard for almost 11 months, when I had an idea. As I'd saved up a lot of money, I decided to use a small amount to pay for a holiday. When I'd finished my job at the restaurant, I went to Japan for a month.
I didn't plan my gap year at all. First, I worked in a supermarket to make some money. I didn't really know where I wanted to go, but I knew I wanted to travel. When I'd earned enough money, I decided to go skiing in France. I found a job working in a restaurant there and spent 6 months skiing, learning French and making friends. After all that snow, I wanted to see the sun, so I went to Spain. I learnt basic Spanish and travelled around the country. When my gap year finished, I'd learnt how to become independent.
For my gap year, I wanted to experience something totally new. I contacted an organisation that works in India, helping poor children who live on the streets. It was hard work because of the problems that these children had to face. But the children we were helping lived in such terrible conditions, so we just kept at it. Now, when I'm studying at university and I have a problem, I think about those children and remember how lucky I am. The work I'd been doing in my gap year really made a difference to them. I decided then that when I finish uni, I want to do a job where I can help others.
My gap year had 2 very different parts. For the first 6 months, I worked as a waitress to make some money, doing overtime most weeks. When I'd done that, I found an organisation that does scientific research in Madagascar. I applied and was offered the job. The whole experience was amazing. We were living in a tent for 3 months and conditions were quite basic, but I loved the bush life. I saw species of plants and animals that you just can't see anywhere else in the world. I worked with people from totally different places. That trip was the start of a new life for me.
I knew exactly what I wanted to do in my gap year. I'd been dreaming about it for years. When I'd finished school, I bought a ticket to travel round the world. It cost £1,800 and included all the various flights and train and bus fares. There were so many highlights. Riding an elephant in Thailand, swimming with dolphins in Australia, doing adventure sports in New Zealand. I went to places that everybody wants to visit one day, but they start university and then work, and they never find the time.
Hello. I would like you to discuss how dangerous the jobs on the diagram are.
Okay. What do you think about being a pilot?
Well, I think it's quite a dangerous job because, of course, you can have an accident and air accidents are always serious.
Maybe, but I don't think they are very common. I think flying is usually a very safe thing to do.
What about firefighters?
I think that's a very dangerous job. They always work in very difficult situations, and they could easily have an accident when there's a big fire.
Yes, I agree. What about police officers?
I think it depends. Their job can be very dangerous at times, but I don't think they're dealing with dangerous criminals every day. Do you agree?
Yes, I think you're right. Sometimes they just do paperwork or stop non-violent crimes.
And what about construction workers?
I think they do a lot of hard manual work, but I don't think it's a very dangerous job, really.
Yes, but they often work high up, and accidents are quite common. You know, in some countries, people don't have to wear helmets, so that's very dangerous.
I see what you mean. And Formula One drivers?
I think that's a really dangerous job too. There's lots of technology to prevent accidents, but accidents still happen when you travel so fast.
Now you have a minute to decide which of those jobs you think is the most dangerous.
I think being a Formula One driver is the most dangerous. In the last few years, there have been some terrible accidents in races.
I agree up to a point, but firefighters have to take risks nearly every day, not just from time to time in a race.
That's true. And being a firefighter is definitely more dangerous than being a construction worker or a police officer.
Yes, because normally those jobs aren't particularly dangerous, only once in a while. And we said that plane accidents aren't so common.
Okay, so why don't we choose the firefighter?
Sure, let's do that.
The train now approaching platform 3 does not stop here. Will passengers please stand well away from the edge of platform 3? Thank you.
The next train at platform 5 is the 1740 service to Newcastle, calling at Oxford, Birmingham New Street, York and Newcastle. At platform 5, the 1740 service to Newcastle.
Will passengers on the platform please let people get off the train before trying to board the train? Please let passengers get off the train before boarding. Thank you.
Due to engineering work, this train will not be stopping at West Kensington. We repeat, the train will not be stopping at West Kensington due to engineering works. We apologise for any inconvenience.
Last call for passengers on flight Jet 325 to Manchester. Please proceed urgently to gate number D34. Flight Jet 325 now boarding from gate number D34.
Passengers are reminded not to leave luggage unattended. Please do not leave luggage unattended.
Hello and welcome to Future World, the programme that looks at new technology and how it's changing our world. Today, we're looking at something that is already starting to have a great impact on our lives: drones. With us is our expert, Scott Wilson. Scott, you've just come back from an annual drone conference in Washington in the US. What can you tell us about the latest developments and where drones are going next?
Hi, Kim. Well, the first thing I discovered is that the industry doesn't like calling them drones. At the conference, people usually talk about UAVs.
UAV? What do those letters stand for?
Unmanned or unpiloted aerial vehicle. So, anything that flies without an actual human being on board. The thing is that when people think of drones, they usually think of war and missiles. In fact, by February next year, the U.S. Army will have been using drones for 42 years already. But in the future, UAVs will be doing millions of different jobs, and many of those jobs will be helping the world, not destroying it.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. In a big national park in Namibia, they're using UAVs to patrol the park, to protect rhinos there.
Really? How do they protect them?
Well, if a UAV finds any hunters, a team is immediately sent to that area to stop them.
So UAVs can actually help to protect wild animals?
That's right. And then take natural disasters. Very soon, it will have become normal for rescue services to send UAVs to the sites of natural disasters like earthquakes, floods, or tsunamis.
OK, but what will the UAVs do there? They won't be able to help anyone, will they?
Yes, they will. They'll be able to examine the site and get a detailed idea of the situation. And they'll also be able to take medicine, water, or food to the victims. That'll be particularly important in remote areas or areas that are difficult to get to for one reason or another.
I've heard that some film studios are using UAVs to make movies.
That's right. It's easy to send a camera up on a UAV and you can get spectacular images from the air.
In the 2014 Winter Olympics, the TV companies started using UAVs to film skiing and other events, didn't they?
Yes. I think soon we'll be seeing UAVs flying over the heads of football players or tennis matches. We'll be able to have really spectacular reporting of sports events.
Isn't that expensive, though?
Well, at the moment, one company sells UAVs to film studios for $30,000. But in 5 or 10 years, the price will have dropped as more and more people buy them. By 2025, the world of the UAV will have become incredibly big business. The world will be spending billions of dollars on UAVs, and thousands of normal people will be using them.
But, of course, a big problem with that is privacy, isn't it? What happens when people start using drones to film normal people at home, or use them to spy on you and find out what you're doing or where you're going?
Yes, that is a very important question. I think governments will need to think hard about new laws for why, how, and when we can use UAVs. Many people are already completely against them.
There's certainly a lot to think about as far as UAVs are concerned. Scott, thanks for coming in and telling us about them.